One day, the President of the United States and the British Prime Minister boarded the same plane, heading to Italy to attend the NATO summit. But mid-flight, their aircraft came under a brutal and unexpected attack. The film opens in Spain during the famous La Tomatina festival, where thousands of people are gleefully throwing tomatoes at one another. It's pure chaos. Tomatoes flying everywhere, people drenched in red pulp. Hidden within this crowd are CIA and MI6 agents on a mission to capture a dangerous Russian arms dealer named Viktor Gradov. He's been off the grid for 2 years, and this is the first time he's surfaced. Every corner of the area is under surveillance, and the mission is being led by Agent Noel Bisset. Suddenly, one agent spots Gradov. Panic spreads among the MI6 team, and they begin a facial recognition scan, but it's no use. Gradov keeps his face covered under a cap, as if he already knew where the cameras were. Then, 2 more men resembling him appear in the crowd. At the same time, a gray van parks beside the MI6 vehicle, raising Agent Bisset's suspicion. Before she can react, chaos erupts. Gradov's men, already planted among the crowd, launch an ambush. Within moments, they kill multiple agents and seize the MI6 van, infecting its system with a bug. Agent Bisset, agile and fearless, fights back with everything she's got. Known for her unmatched courage, she single-handedly confronts the attackers. But a bullet eventually hits her, and everything goes silent. So, what exactly is Viktor Gradov's true motive? Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Sam Clarke is watching the news, and every channel is flooded with reports on American President Will Derringer. A former Hollywood superstar, Derringer's movies used to dominate the box office, but he switched careers and entered politics, gaining public trust within just 5 months. He's recently arrived in London for a press conference where he'll meet Prime Minister Sam Clarke for the first time, who has held the office for the last 6 years. After the press conference, both leaders are scheduled to fly to Italy for the NATO summit. The next piece of news leaves Sam Clarke devastated. During the intelligence operation in Spain, several CIA and MI6 agents were killed, and team leader Noel Bisset has gone missing. She was considered a close ally of Sam. The reason behind this bloodshed? Viktor Gradov, a black market arms supplier. Years ago, NATO had bombed one of his manufacturing plants. Since then, he vanished. Now, it seems he's back for revenge. President Derringer is also briefed about this by his senior advisor, Simon. When Sam and Derringer finally meet, it's clear they don't like each other. The press conference quickly turns into a heated argument over several issues. Realizing this public conflict could harm international relations, their advisors step in. They suggest that both leaders fly together to the NATO summit. It might help project unity and improve public perception. After some persuasion, both leaders agree. Elsewhere, Gradov is fuming over his sniper's failure, which nearly cost the life of an important target. Enraged, he executes the sniper in cold blood. Back in the public eye, news channels begin praising the growing camaraderie between the US President and the UK Prime Minister. Seeing them together delights the public. The two pose for photos and eventually board their flight together. Shortly into the flight, a kitchen crew member brings burgers for the tech staff, but suddenly turns violent, killing everyone in the cabin. He then transmits the aircraft's location to his team, who were waiting for this moment. As soon as they receive the coordinates, they position their own plane directly in front of Air Force One. Sensing danger, Air Force One sends a warning to the unidentified aircraft to change course immediately, but there's no response. Meanwhile, all radios aboard Air Force One go dead. The pilots can't reach anyone. Fear and tension spread throughout the cabin. Suddenly, the enemy aircraft opens its rear door and launches a drone attack on Air Force One. In defense, Air Force One fires back, successfully taking down 3 drones, but the 4th drone crashes into one of the engines, causing significant damage. Now, the attackers' intentions are clear. They are here to bring the president's plane down. Another explosion follows as a drone destroys one of the side doors of the aircraft. Inside the plane, the air pressure dropped rapidly. One man was instantly sucked out of the aircraft due to the sudden decompression. President Derringer and Prime Minister Sam Clarke were also in immediate danger. It looked like they could be pulled out any second. Meanwhile, the intruder on board was creating complete chaos, but the pilot acted swiftly and raised Air Force One to 10,000 feet in order to stabilize the cabin pressure. As the plane steadied, a Secret Service agent rushed to escort the president and the prime minister toward the back of the aircraft where the parachutes were stored. Just then, another wave of enemy drones launched a fresh attack. Air Force One released flares in an attempt to deflect them. While some drones were taken out, the defense wasn't enough. Another drone crashed into the plane's second engine, causing the aircraft to flip in midair. Panic gripped everyone on board. During the chaos, the intruder grabbed a parachute and set the rest on fire. Sam and Derringer barely made it to the rear compartment, only to see the intruder jump out of the aircraft with the last usable parachute. Time was running out. A crash was imminent. Amidst the smoke and flames, the Secret Service agent managed to find 2 parachutes that hadn't been damaged. He handed one to each leader and urgently instructed them, "We're going to crash into Belarusian airspace. You need to head to our safe house in Poland. It's under the Gdansk Bridge in Warsaw, registered under Golden Mountain Mining Company." He quickly explained how to operate the parachutes, then shoved them both out of the plane without hesitation. Prime Minister Sam, being a former British Army soldier, landed without much difficulty, but President Derringer had trouble. His parachute got caught in a tree deep in the forest. Soon, news broke around the world. Air Force One had crashed. Media outlets reported that both the US president and the British Prime Minister had likely perished in the incident. Back in America, Vice President Elizabeth Kirk began the formal process to assume office as acting president. After all, the NATO summit still had to be attended. Meanwhile, Derringer regained consciousness. By then, Sam had already calculated where Derringer might have landed using his experience. He understood that whoever was behind the attack wasn't some ordinary criminal. They had managed to breach one of the world's most secure perimeters. That meant their best shot at survival was to let the world believe they were dead and quietly make their way to the safe house. Sam was right. The news of their supposed deaths had already spread globally, but Derringer refused to accept this. All he wanted was to speak to his wife to let her know he was still alive. He reached for his phone, but before he could dial, Sam smashed it with his boot. He knew the enemy would be tracking every signal. Even a single mistake could lead them straight to their location, and if that happened, the attackers would use them as leverage to make global demands. And so both men set off, but they had no idea where in Belarus they actually were. Back in the US, the swearing-in ceremony concluded, and the powerful Echelon surveillance system was transferred under President Kirk's control. All intelligence protocols were recalibrated. Echelon, known for intercepting global emails, phone calls, faxes, and satellite communications, was now officially under her command. However, Viktor Gradov's men had already hacked into the system using the same bug they had implanted during the La Tomatina festival operation. Within minutes, Echelon was under their control. Meanwhile, in the forest, after wandering aimlessly for hours, Sam and Derringer finally spotted a gathering. A group of young men were partying with loud music, and a car was parked nearby. It might be their way to Warsaw. The 2 leaders attempted to sneak up and steal the vehicle but were caught. Derringer, once a Hollywood superstar, assumed the boys would recognize him, but they didn't. Instead, the group tried to mug them. Sam was ready. As soon as the boys made their move, he struck back like lightning. With his towering 6'2" frame and deadly combat training, Sam took them down one by one. After taking a few punches, Derringer finally realized that these guys weren't messing around. They were seriously trying to hurt them. This wasn't a joke, and in that moment of chaos, something inside Derringer awakened. The old movie star in him kicked in. With a single punch, he knocked one guy's tooth out, so hard it practically made a dent in the wall. But the gang didn't back off. The fight grew more intense, and it seemed like things were spiraling out of control. Just then, a gunshot rang out. A woman stood at the doorway, aiming a gun directly at the attackers. Seeing her, the boys panicked and fled. It turned out this was her house. Sam and Derringer begged her for help, and to their surprise, she agreed without asking for anything in return. They didn't even have identification papers to cross the border, yet she offered to help them. The 2 men hid in the back of her truck, which was filled with sheep, as they headed toward Warsaw. At the border checkpoint, Sam and Derringer had to lie down beneath the sheep, enduring the filth and stench. Derringer struggled in the cramped space, barely holding on. Meanwhile, the woman cleverly managed the border inspection, handing one of the guards a sheep as a gift. Without raising any suspicions, she crossed the border effortlessly. By evening, she had dropped the 2 men off near a local war shop. As she said goodbye, Derringer tried to give her his wristwatch, the same one gifted to him by Keanu Reeves during his Hollywood days. But she smiled and declined. "Thank you, my president," she said. Derringer froze for a moment. It hit him. She had known all along who he was. She knew he was none other than President Will Derringer of the United States. Yet, not once during the journey had she said a word about it. Across the street stood the entrance to the safe house. Sam and Derringer rang the bell. The door opened only after their identities were confirmed by security cameras. Inside, a man greeted them warmly and embraced Derringer tightly. His name was Marty Comer, the field agent in charge of this safe house. Meanwhile, Viktor Gradov, using hacked Echelon surveillance footage, found out that both Sam and Derringer were still alive. Without wasting a moment, he dispatched a team via helicopter toward the safe house in Warsaw. Back inside, Sam asked Marty what had happened after their plane crash. Marty filled them in, how they were attacked, how the Echelon server had been hacked, and how over 20,000 top-secret NATO files had been leaked. These included years of covert activity among NATO nations. The worst part? The breach hadn't come from the outside, it was an inside job. Allies had stabbed each other in the back. Tomorrow's summit wouldn't just be about diplomacy, it would be filled with finger-pointing and scandal. France's secret manipulation of Germany's elections had come to light. The Czech Republic was furious at Italy, suspecting them of sabotaging their economy. And most alarmingly, no one had regained control of the Echelon server. This was just the beginning. Even more explosive revelations were likely. Someone was using Echelon to destroy NATO from within. If NATO collapsed, authoritarian regimes would rise unchecked. The world wouldn't remain stable. The stakes were now global. This could very well spark World War III. Derringer was done hiding. He demanded that Marty contact the US Embassy, but before they could do anything, an emergency alarm blared. Sensing danger, Marty quickly rushed the two leaders into the secure armory below the safe house. The armory was stocked with powerful weapons. Sam and Derringer grabbed the ones they preferred and geared up. Marty gave them a crash course in survival. "If I fail to get you out," he said, "use the secondary exit. Go left, then down the stairs. You'll find a bunker room. On the right wall, there's a poster. Punch it. That's the hidden way out." Upstairs, Gradov's men were already planting explosives at the door. Marty wired a monitor and used the CCTV feed to track the invaders. Then he began a deadly game. One by one, he took out the intruders, picking them off with expert precision. They couldn't figure out who was targeting them, but Gradov's core team eventually figured it out. They located the camera, shot it out, and surrounded Marty. He fought fiercely, but ultimately they cornered him and shot him down. Sam and Derringer, hearing the gunfire, knew they had to run. They dashed downstairs. Around the corner, they spotted the poster Marty had mentioned. Derringer punched it with all his strength, revealing the hidden escape route. But right at that moment, Gradov's men caught up to them. Bullets began flying through the tight corridor. Sparks flew from the walls. The two leaders managed to dive into the passage and found an elevator at the end. Without wasting a second, they got inside and escaped. But the moment they reached the street, two gunmen were already waiting for them. It looked like the end. Then, out of nowhere, a police car came speeding down the road. It rammed straight into Gradov's men, sending them flying. Driving that car was none other than Agent Noel Bisset, the same agent who had gone missing after the Spain mission. MI6 had presumed her dead. When Sam saw her, both he and Bisset paused for a moment. The shock, the relief, and the history between them were all visible in their eyes. The world thought they were dead, so seeing each other alive again was nothing short of a miracle. Years ago, Sam and Bisset had worked side by side, not just as colleagues, but as close friends. "How did you survive?" Sam asked. Stunned, Bisset began telling her story, how she vanished after the mission in Spain, how she stayed alive, and how she never stopped hunting Viktor Gradov. And even while she spoke, her fingers squeezed the trigger, detonating a bomb she had placed inside the car, wiping out the rest of Gradov's team. The breakthrough research that threatened to change the balance of global power didn't originally belong to the US. It belonged to Kradov's son. After years of tireless work, he had nearly completed his weaponized technology. All he needed was enriched plutonium, and his father, Viktor Kradov, arranged for it through the black market. But when the Echelon surveillance system caught wind of the operation, NATO suspected that Kradov was developing a new nuclear weapon. Their response was swift and brutal, a preemptive airstrike. Kradov's son was killed instantly, along with all his research. That groundbreaking innovation was later paraded before the world as an American achievement. The president took full credit, celebrating it as a national success, unaware of the blood and betrayal that laid behind it. From that moment, Viktor Kradov vowed to destroy NATO, but he couldn't do it alone. Someone on the inside was helping him. The strongest suspicion fell on the aides of Sam and President Derringer, the very people who insisted both leaders attend the NATO summit together. No one knew who the traitor was or how deep the conspiracy went. That's why heading to the US Embassy was far too dangerous. The new plan was to get them to Trieste, the most secure point on the continent and the location of the NATO summit. Wasting no time, the three of them boarded a train headed there. Meanwhile, using Echelon, Kradov's men tracked Bisset's location and relayed it to Root. Later that night, as Derringer rested, Sam quietly spoke with Bisset. Once upon a time, they had loved each other, but politics and responsibility had driven them apart. That was the past now. Bisset stepped away to get food, and just then, Root and another man stormed into the cabin with weapons drawn. Without warning, Root shot his own partner. But before dying, the man managed to shoot Root in the stomach. Bisset returned moments later and held her gun to Root. Gasping for breath, Root confessed the truth. He was being blackmailed by Kradov. He was the one who had built Kradov's encrypted communication network. But now he wanted to help. He warned them, "Kradov is watching you through Echelon. Your next stop is a death trap. Jump off this train now and head straight to Croatia. In Zadar, there's a secure terminal at 12 Lavaska Street, 5th floor." Root scribbled a set of access commands on Derringer's palm and whispered, "This command will reveal which top-level security official Kradov has been contacting." With those final words, Root died. Without hesitation, all three of them jumped from the moving train. Meanwhile, Kratov's plan was moving ahead perfectly. With the NATO vote just hours away, 25 countries had already decided to withdraw. President Kirk was losing control fast. Bisset hotwired a car and drove them to Zadar. At the address Root had given, they found the secure terminal hidden inside a shipping container on the 5th floor. But just then, several black vehicles pulled up outside. Kratov's men had found them. There was no time to waste. Bisset worked to access the data while Sam defended the stairway. The attackers rushed upward, and in the chaos, Sam made a critical mistake. One of the grenades in their weapon bag had lost its pin. Realizing the danger, Sam hurled the entire bag down the stairwell. The explosion shook the building. The stairwell collapsed in rubble. But Kratov's men weren't giving up. They began using auto-ascender guns to scale the building's exterior. Sam waited silently, flare in hand. When the first attacker peeked over the ledge, Sam flung the flare into his helmet, sending him and several others plummeting below. Eventually, they abandoned that route. Meanwhile, Bisset finished cracking the program, and what it revealed sent chills down their spine. The traitor wasn't some obscure official. It was none other than President Derringer's closest advisor, Bradshaw. She had been in constant contact with Kratov for the last 18 months. Every message was recorded. Before they could react, a massive jolt rocked the container. A helicopter had hooked onto it and was lifting the entire container into the air, walls shattering around them. Inside were Bisset and Derringer. In the helicopter above, Viktor Kratov aimed a rocket launcher and fired directly at Sam. Bisset could only watch helplessly. They had one chance left: jump. As the chopper soared above a rooftop, Bisset and Derringer leapt out. They slammed onto the roof below, barely surviving. Behind them, Kratov dumped the now empty container, confident that they had perished. He contacted his clients and declared the job done. But moments later, the very men sitting across from him received a text. Their expressions changed instantly. Kratov realized the betrayal. Now that his mission was complete, they planned to eliminate him too. Without blinking, Kratov shot them both dead. By morning, Bisset and Derringer had reached the Trieste port. There, Derringer placed a direct call to President Kirk. He explained everything. Bradshaw was the traitor. Kirk was stunned. "Return immediately," she said. "I'll send the Beast to retrieve you. Until then, I'll do everything I can to delay the vote." The Beast, America's bulletproof presidential limo, a fortress on wheels, arrived soon after. Derringer and Bisset climbed in, but they weren't alone. A familiar face sat across from them, the man responsible for the plane crash. The puzzle clicked into place. The real traitor wasn't Bradshaw, it was Vice President Kirk. She wanted Derringer dead so she could claim the presidency for herself. Kratov was merely her pawn. Moments later, she called her man and ordered, "Take them somewhere quiet and finish the job." But Derringer didn't hesitate. He created a distraction, and together with Bisset, they overpowered the assassin. A shot rang out, killing the driver. Outside, Kratov's men closed in. Escape seemed impossible. Then, out of nowhere, Sam barreled through enemy vehicles in a stolen car and leapt onto the Beast. Reunited, he shared how he survived and escaped. Together, they raced toward the NATO summit. By the time they arrived, the meeting was already underway. Italy and France had announced plans to withdraw from NATO. Even President Kirk was moments away from formally dissolving the alliance. But then Sam and Derringer burst into the hall. They revealed the truth about the betrayal, about Kirk, and about the real threat looming ahead. Kirk argued that the US was investing money, troops, and power, and getting nothing in return. But before she could finish her statement, a gunshot echoed through the room. Kirk collapsed, silenced forever. Kratov had arrived to exact revenge. He threw a grenade and ordered his men, "Kill them all!" Chaos erupted. Bullets flew. Diplomats scattered for cover. In the final moments, as Kratov tried to escape in a helicopter, he was gunned down. His plans, his legacy, his war ended. And with that, the world came one step back from the edge of destruction.